Night in Manila is thick and glossy, a film of heat laid over a city still rebuilding itself from the bones of war. Neon strips along Avenida cast a bruised glow. Jeepneys clatter past storefronts with plywood windows and new paint. Beyond the main roads, the city thins into alleys that smell of diesel and damp laundry. Somewhere in the middle of this restless map stands the Manila City Jail. Concrete corridors, iron bars lacquered with rust, and a women's ward where the lights never feel bright enough. The scream comes like a snapped cable. A guard drops his enamel mug, coffee bleeding across the floor. He rushes down the corridor, the hinges protesting, toward the sound that hits the metal and bounces back. Other inmates press toward the bars, faces pale in the jaundiced light. The scream stops, replaced by a ragged breathing that drags everyone closer, a sound like someone dragging a chair across tile. On a narrow cot sits a girl who looks too small for the room, bare feet tucked under gray wool, hair matted from the heat, and a night without sleep. She is 17. She tells them her name is Clarita. The arrest record says vagrancy, a night raid at the edges of the port. At her intake, she had squinted up at the fluorescent lights and asked if she would be allowed to sleep. Now her eyes are fixed on the ceiling, as though she is watching a cloud that is not there. They're here, she says, voice gone low. No one moves. Then she flinches hard, like the air just hit her with a slap. There's nothing in the room but 3 guards, the warden, and 2 nurses who stayed past their shift because the night is long and overtime pays. Her shoulders bunch, her lips press together. No, she says to something they cannot see. What happens next is subtle, the way a storm announces itself by changing the taste of the air. A bump appears on her forearm, skin swelling as if from a bee sting. Then another. Then 5 impressions aligned in a crescent. One nurse steps closer, hand out, cheeks chalk white. The marks deepen. You can watch it. The flesh bulges outward where teeth would push, then darkens, then breaks the surface with the clean, terrible geometry of a bite. The warden swears. Who hit her? He demands, though everyone is too busy staring. Another set blooms just below, fresh and livid, as if a mouth pressed down, hard. The girl begins to sob, then to laugh. It's wrong. She clamps a hand over her own lips, terrified of whatever sound might come out. Rumors have motion, even before they have form. By morning, there are 3 extra guards at the end of the corridor, and a photographer from a daily paper loitering by the door. Flashbulbs pop like small accidents. One frame catches Clarita with her head turned, the shadow of a hand on her cheek that does not belong to anyone in the room. Someone makes the sign of the cross. Once, twice, again. The air tastes metallic, like the inside of a new coin. When the city wakes, it wakes with stories. The radio announcers on Plaza Miranda trade rumors between pop songs. In the streets, barbers lean over their chairs with scissors paused mid-snip. An American sailor buying cigarettes on Isaac Peral hears about a girl who is being bitten by devils, or by ghosts, or by nothing at all. A fruit vendor says she saw it, the marks rising like bread in an oven. Her daughter rolls her eyes, but she pulls her scapular from under her blouse anyway. Clarita's cell is cleared. They take away the bucket, the blanket tied in a knot to make a pillow, anything that can be thrown or used as a weapon or blamed for a bruise. A doctor from the city clinic arrives with a leather bag and a face in 2 halves, science and worry. He wants explanations. He wants to see the trick. He pulls a glove over one hand and presses gently at the edges of a fresh bite. The skin is hot. He sees the arc of indentations and the lack of any mouth that could make them. What did you feel? He asks. Cold, she says, then shivers. Hot, angry. Who's angry? She shakes her head. The answer sits in the air, unspoken. She is small, and she is alone, and there is something older than her, and older than this jail, and older than the concrete dusting down from the ceiling, and it is looking at her as if she were a door. Another attack. The marks appear on the back of her neck, in front of the doctor and the warden and the photographer's camera. The doctor flinches despite himself. The photographer's hands tremble, the flash thumping light into the cell and carving everyone into brief, stark silhouettes. The warden wants to stop this because he does not have language for what is happening in his jail. He wants a headline that says nothing happened. Clarita looks past them, eyes wet, seeing something none of them can see. She whispers, "Do not bite me," to the corner of the room. There is the faintest sound, like teeth on fruit. By evening, it feels as though the whole city is leaning toward one set of bars. The mayor is called. The mayor doesn't like superstition. He likes order, and he likes a fight. He is quick talking and barrel shouldered and paces when he thinks. He walks the corridors and looks into the cell and does not blink. He asks for more doctors. He calls the press. He figures if this thing has to happen in his city, it will happen where he can see it. No one sleeps. The nurses take turns sitting by the cot, the chair legs grating on the floor whenever they shift. Clarita drifts and jerks awake and drifts again. Paper cups of water, a wet cloth. At 2 in the morning, she laughs again, the laughter running away from her for a full 10 seconds until it hasn't any breath left. When it's over, she whispers, "Mama," and then something else, to a place on the wall where the paint is peeling. Toward dawn, the city sounds change. Roosters, the first tricycles, a vendor's pan struck with a spoon, calling out his bread. In that exhausted hour before daylight makes everyone honest again, the cell fills with something that is not air. Clarita goes stiff. The nurse nearest her puts out a hand instinctively, and in the bright focus of that gesture, everyone in the room watches as the skin over the girl's collarbone rises in a round, human bite. The arc, perfect and fresh, the indentations crisp, a bruise coloring itself at the edges, while the flash of a camera detonates white. And the mayor just arrived, draws a breath to speak, but the sentence never forms, because there is a cry that smashes everything soft inside the room. The warden rips the nearest sheet into strips. The nurse pins the girl's wrists. The doctor curses himself for not bringing more help. Outside, a crowd coalesces as if poured from the city itself. Relatives of inmates, reporters, vendors, curious men in sleeveless shirts with cigarettes tucked behind one ear, women clutching rosaries whose beads go click click in their fingers. The corridor becomes a throat through which rumor climbs. Inside the cell, the work of explanation begins and ends a dozen times. The doctor checks her pupils with a penlight, watches them contract normally. He and his colleague run their hands along the bars, the bed frame, the wall, searching for hardware, for springs, for wires. They search for what they know how to find. They do not find it. They strip the bed to the metal, make her lie on bare mesh, examine every inch of fabric. The bites come anyway, rising like blisters, round and precise. Psychogenic, one says softly, to stand between himself and fear. Conversion disorder, hysteria. He speaks like he's practicing for a lecture hall or a courtroom. She cannot bite her own back, the nurse says, not softly at all. Reporters scribble names, the facts already softening into legend as they squeeze through the doorway for a better angle. One of them catches the mayor in the corridor. Sir, is this a case of witchcraft? Will you allow church intervention? The mayor's look could stop a car. I will allow truth, he says. He orders fewer gawkers, more orderlies, twice daily statements, and for the city to keep its head. He knows that Manila's head is not easy to keep. Clarita tells a doctor, in a voice that isn't quite hers, that they come in twos. She says one is small as a boy and smiles without teeth. She says the other is tall and hairy, with eyes like burnt sugar. She says they come through the wall, and through the floor, and through her skin. She says they are older than church bells. She refuses to say their names, because she believes names are doors. A priest arrives in plain black, collar starched with starch you can almost smell. He is not alone, but only he comes into the room. He opens a book that has been opened in 1,000 rooms before, in the language of Rome and the music of petition. He lays his hand on her forehead carefully. He intones, and the syllables build a scaffolding in the air between them. Her laughter answers. It is not unbroken. It fractures. It cracks. It weeps in the middle. The priest is patient. He does not like that there are reporters 5 paces behind him, but his work has never been private. It is hard to stand in that cell and not feel like a bystander to a crime that cannot be named. The bites keep appearing on her shoulder, on the inside of her thigh, once on the top of her foot, in plain sight of everyone. The shape of it so absurdly ordinary that the absurdity makes men swear, and the nurse blink back tears. Each time, the flesh swells, reddens, and bears the blunt signature of teeth that aren't there. The doctor maps them with a pencil outline on paper. He takes a temperature. He records that there is no fever, no obvious disease. He has nothing to write that sounds intelligent, so he writes what he sees. The mayor orders the girl moved to an infirmary cell with better light, not for her comfort so much as for the city's sanity. In the midday heat, the long aisles of the jail roll with voices. A woman whose sister is locked 2 doors down begins to sell mango slices to the crowd. A young boy holds a battery-powered radio to his ear and repeats what he hears to anyone who will listen. A taxi driver swears that he saw a bite mark appear across the room on a guard's wrist, though the guard denies it and covers his arm with his cap. By late afternoon, a decision is made that could only have been made in a place like this, in a city like this. Let everyone try. Let the doctors try. Let the priests try. Let the folk healers with their oils and their herbs and their sashaying hands try. Let anyone who speaks with authority step forward and see whether their words find purchase. 2 Catholic priests come with charm and ritual, and when they leave, the crowd pushes forward to watch a healer wrap red thread around the girl S' wrist and murmur to a coconut shell that sits like an ear on the floor. The thread yields nothing. The coconut listens to nothing. The bites go on. A reporter asks Clarita who her mother was. She told fortunes, the girl says simply, and her eyes film over as if she's looking at a shoreline far away. Then she died. I had no one. It is a detail that will calcify into a diagnosis for some and a story for others. Night makes the jail a different animal. The lights flicker as if their ideas are running out. The hallway becomes a windpipe again. Everything is breath. The city's most boisterous mayor stands in shirt sleeves, tie yanked down, and puts his hands on his hips and thinks of all the laws this does not touch. He writes a note to himself to call the health secretary. He does not write the other note, the one that his bones keep asking him to write, which is simply this: get her help, any kind of help, even the kind that looks foolish in daylight. Just after midnight, a lean man with a foreign gait steps through the door with a letter of introduction folded in his pocket. He is one of the American missionaries, in a city full of them, a man who looks younger than he is and older than he feels, who has watched grief move through countries and wanted to touch it where it passed. He has a name that starts to spread through the corridor before he reaches the cell, carried on whispers and skepticism. The pastor, the preacher, the one who says he will pray without Latin and without oil and with permission. He pauses at the bars. The mayor looks him up and down. The priest standing at the wall raises an eyebrow. The doctor tells him that the girl's blood pressure is holding, and that there is no fever, and that there is nothing to be done. The missionary asks if he can sit. The mayor, to his own surprise, nods. In the chair beside the cot, the missionary sets his hat on his knee. His voice, when he speaks, is not showy. He tells her his name. He tells her he has to ask permission in a room where permission has already failed to matter. "Do you want me to pray?" he asks. She closes her eyes. "They don't," she says. And the sound that comes out carries years of alleyway nights and meals wrapped in newspaper and the ocean's rusted taste. For a breath, it is not a scream at all. It's a root pulled out of the ground. Then it's a howl that drives 3 men back, and the nurse, 1 step forward, hand out again, reflex older than training. The missionary does not raise his voice. He addresses the air, as if addressing a stubborn guest. He has learned that spectacle feeds hunger. He says the words he has said at hospital beds, and beside caskets, and in rooms where the trouble had names like grief and anger. Not this. He says that the room belongs to God. He says the girl does not belong to the teeth. Clarita twists, her bare heels scraping metal. "They are angry," she whispers through someone else's breath. "You make them angry." He nods. "I know." He asks the thing that hears him to let go. He asks again. He keeps asking, the words becoming a weight and a rhythm, the kind of rhythm that can steady a hand or a heart. The priest begins to pray too, quietly, the Latin a rope thrown across a chasm, and for a moment the room is only voices and breath, and the click of a rosary bead sliding under a thumb. The mayor leans against the wall and does not pretend to understand which words matter, only that, for the first time in 2 days, the words do not feel like newsprint. They feel like water. Her laughter returns, but now it stutters, folds into itself. Sweat beads at her hairline. The doctor glances at the men on either side of the bed. "Don't hold her wrists like that," he says. "You'll bruise her." The missionary takes his hands away. The girl's hands float up like small birds, then twitch and fall back to the sheet. "Can you see them?" the missionary asks, not out of curiosity, but because it seems to draw her focus into one thread. Her eyes fasten to a point just above the corner of the bed. She nods minutely. Two, she says. They like. She hesitates, as if something sharp has moved inside her. They like the dark. Do they answer when I tell them to leave? He asks. They laugh. Tell them I am not leaving either. It is a long night, measured not by hours, but by the rise and fall of her chest and the steady cadence of voices building a fragile scaffold between her and whatever leans over her from the other side of the veil. Bites come and go. Some are small, like the mouths of children. One blossoms at her jawline, a horror so intimate that the nurse cannot look straight at it. The missionary keeps his voice steady until the edges fray, and then he steadies it again. Between prayers, the doctor offers sips of water to lips that are split and trembling. There is a moment when her body goes limp, very suddenly, like strings cut. The doctor's hand is on her wrist before anyone else can move. Pulse, he says, because it's there, slow and stubborn. She is somewhere else. She is not breathing. The room holds its breath with her for 2, 3, 4 seconds until air finds her again, like a bird finding a window, and the breath returns all at once. The nurse puts her head against the doorframe and lets out a breath so slowly it could be a prayer. The missionary's voice changes. It sharpens, not louder, but aimed. You cannot have her, he says. The good thing about a declarative sentence is that it leaves no room for comment. She is a child, he says, and the word hits the bars and the wall and rings. He has no theology finer than that in his throat at 3 in the morning with a girl's skin blooming with weapons he cannot see. She is not yours, he says again, as if building a fence plank by plank. They take a break because bodies demand it. The mayor steps out into the corridor and looks at the city, bad sleep through a barred window. He has never liked the smell of hospitals, and now he knows why. They all smell a little like decisions. He lights a cigarette and thinks of the lines he will draw around this when the press asks him what exactly he allowed in his jail. He wonders whether he has just put himself on the wrong side of the church, or of history, or of nothing at all. When they return, the second onslaught is worse. Perhaps because everyone is tired. Perhaps because the thing in the room has learned. The laughter turns into a low, steady hum, and the bites arrive not one by one, but in a spray, across her chest and shoulder and calf, the marks blooming so fast that the nurse asks water as if she has been hit by smoke. The doctor's pencil scratches furiously, then stops. He is drawing a map of a country that refuses to sit still. Ask them their names, the priest says softly. It is not theatrical. It is method. The missionary does not like the practice, but he meets the girl's eyes. What do they call themselves? She shakes her head, then shakes it again, not as an answer, but as a fight against a thought. They don't like light, she says. They don't like morning. She swallows. This morning, then we will stay until the morning, he says, and the promise binds them to the room, a small vow laid down like a coin on a table. It is not a strategy. It is a decision. The hours collapse. Someone opens the window, and the scream of the roosters enters like a horn. The eastern sky leans white. In that hour when a city decides to keep living after all, the girl goes very still. The hum stops. It is not resolution. It is a cliff where a road just ends. The missionary lowers his head and speaks one sentence that is all bone. You will stop now. Her eyes focus. They look ordinary all of a sudden, young all of a sudden, peering out of a face that looks like a child's punishment. A single tear finds the corner of her mouth. She closes her eyes. She sleeps. The room exhales. The nurse cries quietly, then laughs at the sound of it. The priest makes an unreadable cross in the air with one finger. The doctor writes, "She slept," as if those two words could be wrapped around the rest. The missionary sits without moving, hat still on his knee, too wary of relief to let it touch him. The sun finishes the work of making everything look ridiculous and possible. Outside, the city invents a new day with confidence it has no right to have. Inside, the cell holds its own weather. The mayor, who has not lain down since the night before, says something about breakfast that sounds like it belongs to another kind of morning. And the men and women leave the room one by one, like guests leaving a wake. They do not lock the door any differently than they did yesterday. And yet, as the hour swings toward noon and the air thickens, the fluorescent light flickers once, twice, like a signal. Clarita's eyes snap open as if yanked by another pair of hands. She says one word in a voice so calm it chills every warm place in the room. No. Her gaze goes past the missionary's shoulder to a point behind him, the way people look when the person they love walks into the room. The bite blooming on her forearm doesn't wait for anyone's permission. It arrives in full, and the laughter that follows has learned a new language since dawn, and it speaks it without breath. The laughter is not high or low. It is a pressure, a vibration in the metal of the bed, the bars, the spoon in the water cup. It rattles against the bones of the people in the room and turns the space into a bell that someone is striking from the inside. The missionary's jaw tightens and then releases. "All right," he says softly, less to the room than to his own fear. "All right." He stands. He does not put his hands on the girl. He puts them open, at his sides, fingers splayed, palms empty. He says the same words he said before, only now he says them with a deliberate refusal to hurry, because the thing that pushes at the edges of the room wants him to scramble and wants the rhythm to break. The priest moves closer, Bible open to pages that look worn in the places where other hands have worn them. He reads. The language layers the air like smoke. The doctor has stopped writing. He watches. The mayor, who does not like to watch anything he cannot arrest, stands as if his body could somehow occupy the doorway enough to keep whatever is in the room from leaving or entering. A storm builds over Manila, with all the theater of the island's wet months. Heat hovers. The first shy drops of rain find the corrugated roofs, and the whole city leans toward relief. In the cell, the pressure climbs until the sweat on the missionary's temple feels cold. Another bite forms at the notch of the girl's shoulder. The nurse does not look away this time. If this must be seen, she thinks, then let it be seen. For the first time, the girl speaks without being spoken to. "You will not have me," she says, perfectly clear, like a sentence from a school book. The room stops. The missionary nods once, as if she has told him a password. "Say it again," he says. "Say it again. Louder." She tries. The second time the words come out warped, broken mid-vowel, pulled at by a hook embedded somewhere deep. Her face contorts as if trying to spit something out. "Say what is true," the priest murmurs, and for a moment the girl's lips tremble with it. "I am not yours," she manages, and then a fresh welt opens on her throat, as if silencing that line required teeth. The mayor steps closer, unfairly large, in the small room. Enough, he says to men and air alike. Finish this. I cannot have this city in this room for one more day. He means newspapers. He means nights like this for other women in other cells who are now waking screaming because rumor has taught their dreams a new shape. He means his own limits. The missionary feels what the mayor says, the way a captain feels a swell hitting the hull. He chooses plain words. By the authority of Christ, he says, it is as specific as he knows how to be. You will leave. He gathers the syllables together with the stubbornness of a farmer, hoeing the same row again and again and again. The words are not magic. If they are anything, they are tools. The storm decides to come. Rain hits the roof and the sides of the building and the open window and explodes into the corridor. People shout and then grow quiet in the kind of silence that rain buys in a city like this. The girl's hair plasters to her forehead. The laughter surges once, as if to meet the storm's arrival with its own crescendo, then drops into a growl. Look at me, the missionary says. It is both a request and an invitation and a command. Her eyes slide past him to the corner. He steps sideways into her open line of sight, making himself a silhouette against the light. Look at me, he says again, sharper. Her gaze flicks to his face and holds there with a kind of shock. He lowers his voice until it is almost nothing. You have been alone, he says, and the sentence is not technique. It is truth spoken aloud, like a rope thrown to someone in water. But not now. We are not leaving you. Her mouth moves. There is so much rain. The nurse wipes her forehead and her own with the same cloth, an unholy communion that nonetheless feels like the right thing. Tell the truth, the priest urges, reading without reading now, the words like timber for a fire that must not go out before morning. What do they want? The doctor asks, breaking his own rule to remain neutral. What do they want? It is not a medical question. It is a human one, and it comes out of him like sweat. She looks at the doctor as if he has asked about the weather. To keep me, she says, and smiles a smile that is not hers, the rictus of a puppeteer pulling strings until the mouth is a wound. The missionary keeps going. The mayor mutters something about ending this. The storm picks up. In a city that knows typhoons the way fishermen know faces, the clouds stack upon clouds, and wind slides its hand under the door. Dimness steps closer. The bulb overhead swings imperceptibly. He does not care about sequence anymore. He says every honest sentence he has. He says light belongs here. He says this girl is not prey. He says leave. He says leave. He says leave until the word loses vowels and becomes almost a hum. Her body bows, then straightens, then bows, as if erased and redrawn by a furious hand. Then, without warning, all motion stops except for her eyes, which fix on a point just beyond the missionary's shoulder, a place the air doesn't seem to fill. The rain hammers. The bulb goes black with a pop. It is not total darkness. The hall's light bleeds in gray. The nurse's intake of breath is the loudest thing in the world. The missionary has a hand on the bed frame and feels it vibrate with laughter that no one can hear with their ears. The mayor swears eloquently and reaches for the door to shout for a flashlight he already knows will be dead. Before anyone can move, somewhere near the floor at the foot of the bed, something shifts the air. Something a dog might growl at. Clarita inhales so sharply, Her ribs show like a ladder. In the throb of the storm, in the thin rag of light, her voice cuts the room clean in two. Now, the rain swallows the hallway. The first flash of lightning claws through the window bars and pours raw light across her face, across the missionary's hands, across the map of bruises that look like a country no one wants to live in, and the word she is about to say will decide whether the thing in the corner began to leave an hour ago or never intended to move at all. Go, she says, with a steadiness that doesn't belong to exhaustion or show. She says it once. The lightning finds an echo. She says it again, stronger. The room takes the shape of that word as if it were a mold. The priest's voice rides between the syllables, Latin tasting like metal and rain. The missionary does not do anything remarkable except stand there and agree with every fiber he owns. The bite at her throat pales in front of them. The edges retreat as if losing interest. On her forearm, the perfect, hateful half-moon softens, unlearning itself. The laugh that lived in the bed frame falters, not in defeat, but in dishonor, like a thief caught in light. The nurse watches the places on the girl's skin become simply skin again, and she covers her mouth with her hand and lets herself cry. Go, the girl says again, and now her voice breaks, not because the word is broken, but because everything around it is. She repeats it, a beat, a drum, a nail driven over and over into a piece of wood until all you can hear is the hammer, S love for the nail. The missionary nods, eyes closed, one hand lightly gripping the metal at the end of the bed, grounding himself to the ugly object in front of him because holiness sometimes needs a bolt to hold on to. You will not return, the priest adds, calm as a man closing a window against wind. He is not sure he believes the sentence, the way it's phrased. He has seen returns, after all. But there is value in that kind of declaration. It draws a line, even if the sea will cross it later. The room does not soften. It empties, like air evacuating a jar. The pressure eases and then leaves entirely. The storm keeps speaking its own language. The light flicks back to life with a jitter. The missionary's relief arrives late. He mistrusts it. He waits. He is good at waiting. It is the one talent ministry guarantees. The doctor steps forward with a face he will later be embarrassed by. Naked, wondering, he examines the skin that 10 minutes ago performed bruises, like tricks, and finds only ghastly after images, fading as he watches. He touches the girl's wrist with the back of his fingers, feeling for fever or for the truth. There is only warmth and pulse, and the primitive theater of a body's normal life. The mayor unfolds his arms and holds them out like he has crossed a river. He looks at the priest, at the missionary, at the doctor, at the nurse, and then at the young woman who has been the city's question for days. He does not say thank you. He isn't sure who to thank. He says instead, rest, and the command is so ordinary that it is holy. Clarita closes her eyes. She sleeps the sleep of someone who hasn't been allowed to sleep. Rain rubs the building raw and smooth. The corridor outside is suddenly more interesting to everyone than the doorway to this room, and bodies dissipate, drawn by the itch of hunger, by the promise of a story better told from the safety of a lighter, a cigarette, a covered veranda. The photographer stares at his camera as though the images inside could bite him on their way out. In the thinned light of late afternoon, with the city washed and steaming, the girl wakes, drinks water, asks for food. The nurse peels an orange, with a practiced thumb and forefinger and passes the sections one by one as if feeding a child. The sweet oil of the peel coats the nurse's hands, and for a second the cell smells like a market again, like morning, like normal. She speaks carefully. I don't feel them, she says, like someone talking about pain as if it were weather. I don't hear them. She says it once, quietly, alone with it. She says it again to the room, and every person in it breathes in. The missionary listens with his whole body. He has waited for this exact sentence, the one no prayer can force. He nods and does not shout or cry, though he wants to do both. The bites do not return that day. They do not return the next. A photograph appears in an American magazine a week later. A girl in a cell with a newspaper S caption, wry and suspicious. Manila's own papers publish and forget and publish again. A phrase slides into the city's talk like a blade between ribs, bitten by devils. Buses groan under the weight of people clutching the tail and their own lives. A woman on a ferry to Cavite tells her neighbor she prayed for the girl every morning for a week and that now she prays for her to find work to marry, to live someplace where the walls have no teeth. The city keeps moving. It is built to forget. Something in it refuses, and so a thin seam of the story remains, stitched into certain corners. A barber shop where the radio was too loud that week. A vendor who claims to have seen the first bite. The mind of a nurse who still wakes some nights with the phantom feeling of a hand in hers. The mayor moves on to a labor dispute and then to a headline that doesn't involve teeth. When asked months later, he says only that he did what the city required and that he has little patience for superstition, which is true and not true at once. The missionary leaves with a notebook full of dates and hours and sentences he could not quite line up. He writes a book about the event, measured and not measured, because writing is the only way to keep your hand on a thing like this without bleeding. He tells the story in churches where the light is always softer than the light in that cell, and people cry at lines they don't know why they are crying at. The priest returns to a calendar of baptisms and funerals, and when he reads the rite for the possessed in later years, he feels the echo of rain and metal. What becomes of Clarita is less neat, because lives rarely are. In the official record, she is relocated, released, escorted out with less ceremony than a ship leaving a pier. There are rumors, of course, that she married, that she left the city, that she returned to the province, that she went to work bending wire into shapes that had nothing to do with teeth. Her name becomes a using word, one that mothers say when they want daughters home before dark, one that photographers say when they compare impossible pictures to other impossible pictures. She is a person in only a handful of those tellings. The rest make of her an event. You could reach for explanations. Doctors did then and later. They used terms: mass psychogenic illness, conversion reaction, that make a kind of sense until you try to fit them over the exact shape of a bite that came in front of 6 witnesses and a camera. Skin can do astonishing things under siege. Minds are cities of rooms. In a country where Catholic icons hang above headboards beside amulets woven from red thread, one could even say that the story is less an argument than an arrow pointing at a space between ways of knowing. But if you strip the story to its scaffold and look the one sentence that stands intact, the one thing no telling can rearrange is a picture. A child of the city in a room with bad light, laughing wrong, and then laughing not at all, saying the word go. It is not doctrine, it is not proof, it is an image that caught in 1,000 eyes and refused to unhook. Manila dries. Manila floods again and dries again. The jail is repainted and then repainted again, the paint chalking off on the wrists of new men and women who count their days with marks scratched into concrete. The city builds its first modern towers. Buses become louder. Radios become televisions. Televisions become glowing rectangles held in hands. Stories get faster. Pictures brighter. The bite marks are now sepia, grainy and unbelievable, shared in corners of rooms and then blinking out. The nurse who held the girl's hand grows old. Sometimes she tells the story, mostly she doesn't. When she does the part she always returns to is not the marks, not the laughter in the metal, not the storm or the mission or the mayor's jaw, but the way the girl looked the second time she said the word go, as if for the smallest measurable unit of time, her life belonged only to her, and the door she told to open obeyed. That is the only part a city can keep without bruising itself with doubt. It is the part worth carrying. A room with bad light, a girl in a borrowed dress. The word go, spoken calmly and hurled like a stone at whatever waited in the corner. If stories like this move you, subscribe for more true events that change the world.